Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. After the main character dies in his previous life, he gets reborn inside of My Little Pony as the Shadow Monarch. What will the Shadow Monarch do inside of My Little Pony?
My Little Pony, what if I am the Shadow Monarch? Chapter 1, Shadows in Equestria. When I first opened my eyes, I was struck by the unnatural stillness of the air. There was a sweetness to it, cloying and almost suffocating, that hovered like a thick veil over the world. Grass pressed softly beneath me, its blades fine and cool, brushing against my black coat. I blinked, the clarity settling slowly as I took stock. I was no longer human. The limbs beneath me were unfamiliar but solid, hooves where hands had once been, a sleek black pelt stretching over muscles I recognized from memory, but now reshaped by this new form. I was a pony. But not just any pony. I was the Shadow Monarch. The words echoed inside me, heavy and undeniable. The power coiled inside my chest, waiting, watching. A chill rose with the realization, ponies in this world were no simple creatures. Alicorns wielded reality-bending magic, unicorns crafted spells that could warp space, earth ponies commanded the very land beneath their hooves. Even the smallest Pegasus could stir storms. This was a land saturated with strength on a scale that dwarfed what I'd known. My first instinct was fear. The weight of potential threats pressed down like a leaden fog. What if I was outmatched? What if my own powers were insufficient in this realm? The thought churned beneath my ribs until I seized control. If I was the Shadow Monarch, if I carried within me the legacy of power that came with that title, then I needed to prove it to myself, first of all. I reached deep within the well of my being and summoned Agiris. The very act felt like ripping a veil. The presence of Agiris filled me, raw and overwhelming. Then Bara followed, a dark twin force resonating with equal intensity. Together, they surged through my veins like a river of liquid night, magnified beyond anything I had known before, hundredfold in strength, raw and unfiltered. The power crackled and hummed beneath my skin, an avalanche waiting to break free. The scale of it was staggering. Agiris and Baru alone, multiplied by 100, meant I stood on a pedestal of strength that could bend this world's rules. Yet there was a limitation that gnawed at me. These were their solo powers, tethered to the Season 2 boundary. I could not call forth their full potential beyond what the early chapters had shown. Still, the fact that this was all I had access to and yet I wielded such magnitude was exhilarating. I flexed my new form, feeling the tension in muscle and sinew beneath the glossy black coat. Every movement was precise, every sense heightened. I was no mere pony, I was a force of shadow and command. But there was something else, a cold, simmering edge beneath the surface. This world was governed by harmony, friendship, and light. I was a monarch of shadows. That truth alone could make me an outcast, a danger, or a tyrant. I didn't know yet what I intended, only that my survival and dominance depended on careful steps. As I stood beside the reflective pool, I considered my options. I could conceal my power, play the part of another pony, quietly observing this new world. Or I could test the limits of my strength and push forward, carving my own domain amidst the idyllic facade. Suddenly, movement near the treeline caught my attention. A figure approached, a bright orange pony with a mane like fire, eyes sharp and inquisitive. The cautious yet curious glance she gave me said one thing: this place was already watching me. I forced a calm expression and prepared to speak. Chapter 2, First Encounters and Hidden Strength. The air hung quiet and still, the early morning mist curling lazily around the trunks of tall oaks that bordered the clearing where I stood. My black coat absorbed what little sunlight pierced the canopy, making me almost a shadow against the pale grass beneath my hooves. A deceptive peace blanketed this part of Equestria. Beneath that peace, I could feel the pulse of something far more intricate, like a calm sea hiding currents strong enough to pull entire vessels under. It was a peace I was learning to wear like armor, though the fire within me was anything but calm. A set of hooves approached softly, their measured rhythm echoing faintly. She appeared at the edge of the clearing, a solid, honest-looking earth pony with a mane that burned like a flickering flame, eyes sharp and steady. Applejack. The name rolled through my mind with a practiced familiarity, but here, in this body, that knowledge felt both a gift and a curse. She stopped a few paces away, her gaze steady as she took me in with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Hey there," she said, her voice warm but laced with caution. "You're new here, ain't ya?" I met her steady gaze without hesitation. "Yes. I am new." Her nostrils flared as if scenting danger, though she gave no overt sign of fear. "Well, welcome to Ponyville. We don't get many ponies passing through who look like you." Black coat, quiet and mysterious. There was no judgment, only wariness. "What brings you here?" I considered my words carefully, knowing that every syllable could tip the scales between trust and suspicion. "I seek understanding. This world, it is unlike any I have known." She blinked, then nodded slowly. "That's fair. Ponyville's peaceful, but it ain't always easy for newcomers. We value friendship and honesty." The word hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. I could feel the weight of it pressing against my nature, the monarch of shadows in a land ruled by light and harmony. I swallowed the urge to dismiss it or rebel against it. Instead, I chose my response with precision. "I intend no trouble. Peace is beneficial," I said evenly, allowing a faint edge of sincerity to temper the formality. Applejack's eyes searched mine a moment longer before a slow, almost imperceptible nod broke the tension. "Well, if you need any help settling in, just ask. We take care of our own here." There was a simplicity to her offer that felt almost naive, but also genuine. I sensed no hidden agenda, no veiled threat. For now, that was enough. As she turned and trotted away, I summoned a subtle trickle of Ajiri's power, no more than a whisper of shadow curling beneath my hooves. It shimmered briefly, then vanished, leaving no trace save for the faintest chill in the air. Applejack glanced back, brow furrowed, but made no move to approach again. The balance held. Once alone, the weight of my situation settled over me. This world was peaceful on the surface, but it was layered with undercurrents, alliances, unspoken rivalries, threats lurking beyond sight. Every pony here carried power, though it was wielded differently than what I remembered. Alicorns bent reality, unicorns bent magic itself. Even earth ponies possessed an innate strength that grounded them to this land. I flexed my hooves, feeling the latent power thrumming beneath my skin. Ajiri's and Beru's presence in me was a river of shadow and force magnified 100-fold, bound to the limits of their solo forms from Season 2, yet enough to shift the scales of power here. Still, I needed patience. Displaying strength too soon would bring enemies faster than I could control. Harmony here demanded subtlety, restraint. I let the silence fill me, listening to the rustling leaves, the distant chatter of birds, and the quiet beat of my own breath. I was a stranger, a monarch of shadow, standing at the threshold of a world that would never truly accept me if it knew who I was. But for now, I would walk the line. I would be peaceful. I would watch. I would wait. And I would prepare. Chapter 3, Quiet Calculations Among Friends. The morning sun spilled golden light over Ponyville, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the quaint streets and tidy gardens. I followed at a careful distance behind Applejack, her steady stride sure and unhurried. Every detail of the town, its simple wooden fences, blossoming apple trees, and bustling market stalls felt both alien and oddly familiar, a stark contrast to the cold emptiness I had carried before. Applejack glanced over her shoulder, eyebrows slightly raised. "You've been quiet since we left the forest. Ain't you gonna say something?" I met her gaze calmly. "There is much to observe. This place, it operates on rules unlike any I have known. I find it interesting." She snorted softly, amusement flickering in her amber eyes. "You're one of those deep thinkers, hey?" Well, Ponyville's full of rules, but the biggest one's that we take care of each other. I nodded slowly, weighing her words. That is a simple rule. Yet I suspect it runs deeper, woven into the fabric of this society. Applejack's smile was easy but carried the weight of experience. You'd be right about that. It's not just about helping your neighbor, it's about trust, loyalty, and knowing who's got your back. Her openness surprised me. Most worlds I had known dealt in politics with veiled threats and hidden agendas. Here, trust was openly celebrated, yet beneath it, I could sense the undercurrents: alliances formed, reputations built and broken. I allowed myself a moment to study Applejack's demeanor, practical, honest, and unyielding. She carried a quiet strength that didn't need to shout. That kind of strength could be useful. We reached Sweet Apple Acres, the sprawling orchard home that stretched beneath the rising sun. The air smelled sharp with the scent of ripe fruit and earth. Applejack paused at the gate and looked back. You gonna come in? It's not much, but it's home. I hesitated, then nodded. Yes. It is important to understand the places and people if I am to integrate. She grinned. Well, then, you're in for a treat. My family's the best at what they do, and they're mighty welcoming. Inside, the familiar bustle of family life greeted us. Applejack's younger siblings, Big Macintosh and Apple Bloom, moved about with quiet energy, and her mother, Granny Smith, sat on the porch, knitting with steady hands. Applejack introduced me quickly but without ceremony. This here's a friend who's new to Ponyville. Just try to be nice. The family's welcoming smiles felt genuine, their easy chatter like a current I could dip into without suspicion. I listened, weighing every phrase, every tone, cataloging the subtle signals of their relationships. They spoke of harvests, festivals, and old stories that anchored them to this land. Granny Smith's gaze lingered on me a beat longer than the rest, as if sensing something beneath my calm exterior. I returned her look without flinching. Later, as we walked among the rows of apple trees heavy with fruit, I allowed myself to ask. What is it that keeps this place peaceful? What stops discord from taking root? Applejack paused, her hands on her hips, eyes scanning the orchard as if the answer was planted in the soil itself. It's trust. And knowing that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. We look out for each other because if one falls, the rest fall too. Her words hung between us, simple but layered. I considered the weight of community, a sharp contrast to the isolation I had carried before. The Shadow Monarch was used to commanding through fear and force, here, influence was built on connection. Could I adapt? I felt Ajiri's and Beru's presence beneath the surface, a steady pulse of power reminding me who I was. They were my edge, my advantage in this delicate game. But to wield that power without shattering this fragile peace, I would need finesse. Strategy. Applejack looked at me with a curious tilt of her head. You're thinking a lot for a pony who just got here. I met her gaze, a faint trace of a smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Observation is survival. She laughed softly, the sound warm and real. Well, you're gonna fit right in if you keep that up. The sun climbed higher, but the shadows beneath the trees seemed deeper than before, not just from the canopy, but from the questions I carried. For now, I would be patient. I would listen. I would learn the rules of this world and find where my power could reshape them. But first, I had to walk among these ponies who lived by trust and friendship, hiding the shadows that grew within me. Chapter 4, Beneath the Surface Calm. The warmth of the orchard sunlight stretched long over the rolling hills of Sweet Apple Acres as I walked alongside Applejack, the steady earth pony whose honest demeanor contrasted sharply with the complexity swirling in my mind. Our previous conversations had been a delicate dance, simple words layered with meaning, subtle assessments exchanged beneath the veneer of small talk. But the surface calm of Ponyville was not so simple as it seemed. I had to understand what lay beneath if I was to survive. More than that, if I was to find a foothold in this strange new world where magic was law and harmony ruled the day, I had to learn the undercurrents, the whispered conflicts, the unspoken rivalries, the fractures hidden behind smiles. Applejack, ever pragmatic, was my guide into that world. We paused at the edge of a wooden fence that bordered a patch of land where several ponies gathered, their voices low and serious. I sensed the shift before I heard the words attention that lingered like static in the air. My black coat absorbed the sun's rays, but the shadows inside me grew longer, pulsing faintly with the presence of Agiris and Beru. I spoke first, keeping my tone neutral but direct. What is this gathering about? Applejack's eyes narrowed slightly, her posture stiffening. Trouble. Ponyville's peaceful, but even here, problems find a way to creep in. That lot is talking about the recent disputes between some of the town's groups. I studied the ponies assembled, a mix of earth ponies and unicorns, faces marked by concern, frustration, and something I recognized immediately: fear masked as anger. Power in this world didn't always announce itself with a show of force, it often whispered through influence and alliances. Disputes between groups? I pressed. Applejack's jaw tightened. Yeah. Some of the earth ponies think the unicorns are getting too big for their britches. Claim they're meddling in stuff they don't understand. And the unicorns? They don't like being told they can't use magic how they want. The conflict was subtle, but the implications were clear. A division between those who relied on physical strength and those who wielded magic. A fracture beneath the harmony. I nodded, letting the information settle. And the others? How do the Pegasi fit in? She glanced toward the sky, where a few Pegasi flitted lazily between the clouds, their wings beating with casual grace. Pegasi mostly keep to the skies, mind and the weather and all. But they watch, and they listen. This kind of tension affects the whole town. I allowed my eyes to drift back to the group, reading between the lines, sensing the unspoken stakes. A town balanced on the edge of distrust. The potential for conflict was a crack waiting to widen. How do the leaders handle this? I asked, voice low. Applejack's face darkened slightly. Twilight Sparkle tries to keep the peace. She's smart and powerful, but she can't do it alone. Not when old grudges run deep, and some ponies want things to change, whether for better or worse. I felt the pulse of that power beneath her name, a presence I'd only heard whispered of. Twilight Sparkle, the unicorn who was said to have magic unlike any other in Equestria. Her involvement signaled the seriousness of the rift. This was the world I had entered, not just fields and friendship, but politics and power struggles concealed beneath friendly smiles. As Applejack spoke, I considered my own position. I was the Shadow Monarch, a figure born of darkness and strength, wielding Agiris and Beru's might magnified 100-fold. Yet here, my powers were constrained by rules and unknown limits. If I revealed too much, I risked becoming a target. But if I stayed in the shadows too long, I would lose influence. I had to walk the razor's edge. The conversation shifted as Applejack pointed out certain individuals in the group: earth ponies who had grown restless, unicorns whose magic crackled with barely concealed frustration. I noted their postures, the way they exchanged glances, the subtle signals that marked their alliances. You see, Applejack said quietly, this isn't just about magic versus muscle. It's about trust. Some of these ponies don't trust the changes coming, don't trust each other. And that makes them dangerous. Her words were a reminder of the delicate balance I must maintain. Trust here was a currency as valuable as any spell or weapon. But trust was also fragile, easily broken, easily exploited. I took a slow breath and met her gaze. Then it seems your town is a powder keg. What prevents it from exploding? Applejack shrugged, a rueful expression flashing across her face. A little hope. A lot of stubbornness. And the belief that friendship can fix things. I studied the resolve in her eyes and the sincerity in her tone. They believed in harmony, even when it was difficult. I envied that strength, though I knew my own path would diverge. We lingered there for a while longer, listening to the murmurs of the gathering before the group dispersed with reluctant nods. I filed away every detail: the tensions, the players, the subtle fractures. My mind already weaving strategies, calculating possibilities. Later, as the sun dipped lower and shadows lengthened, Applejack and I walked back towards Sweet Apple Acres in silence. The peaceful beauty of the orchard belied the complex web of conflict I had glimpsed. I flexed my hooves, feeling the latent power beneath my skin, the steady heartbeat of Agiris and Beru reminding me that I was no ordinary pony. I had to be careful. I had to be patient. Harmony was a fragile thing. But shadows had their place even here. Chapter 5, The Test of Twilight's Gaze. The day was already fading when I finally found myself standing at the threshold of the Golden Oak Library. The massive tree's branches stretched wide, its interior a labyrinth of books and scrolls, magic humming faintly in the air. Twilight Sparkle's domain and the center of Ponyville's knowledge and power. I had been warned of her significance, yet nothing prepared me for the tangible weight of her presence before I even met her. Applejack's words echoed in my mind. Twilight Sparkle tries to keep the peace. She's smart and powerful, but she can't do it alone. That made her a linchpin, a force that could sway this fragile balance. I stepped inside, my hooves silent on the polished wooden floor. Twilight sat near the heart of the room, poring over a tome that radiated a soft purple glow. She looked up as I entered, eyes sharp and calculating beneath a lavender mane. "Shredder," she said, her voice calm but precise. "Applejack told me you wanted to speak." I inclined my head, careful to keep my posture relaxed yet commanding. "Yes. I believe it necessary to understand the forces shaping Ponyville if I am to find my place." Her gaze sharpened, studying me as though weighing every word and breath. "Understanding is important. But power, and the intent behind it, matters more." The words struck close. I was no stranger to power, nor to the motives that fueled it. But here, in this realm of light and harmony, power was expected to serve peace, not dominion. "I understand your concerns," I said carefully. "But power can be a tool for order. For protection." Twilight's eyes narrowed slightly. "And yet, it can also be a weapon of destruction. How do I know you don't seek to upset the balance?" The question was not an accusation but a challenge. I felt the familiar presence of Agiris and Beru beneath my skin, a low hum of strength ready to rise. But I knew revealing even a hint of that power now would destroy any chance of trust. Instead, I met her gaze evenly. "Because I choose patience. Because I recognize that survival here demands more than raw strength." Her expression softened just a fraction. "Good. Patience is a rare virtue." The conversation shifted then, from words to unspoken tests. Twilight's eyes flickered with a spark of magic as she extended a hoof, releasing a delicate orb of violet light that danced in the air between us. "This is a test," she explained. "A simple spell to sense intent and character. I want to see if you truly align with the values of this world." I felt the orb's glow brush against my skin, probing, searching. It was neither hostile nor benign, but diagnostic, probing the darkness within me. The shadows around me stirred, Agiris and Beru's power whispering warnings. Yet I held steady, controlling the flood beneath my coat. "Your magic is strong," Twilight observed. "But there is something unusual about you." I inclined my head slightly. "I am not of this world. My strength comes from elsewhere." She considered that silently, eyes searching mine. "You carry shadows. That is clear." I did not deny it. Shadows were not just darkness, they were a part of me, a weapon and a shield. Twilight stepped closer, her aura pulsing. "In Equestria, shadows are feared. But they can be understood. Even embraced if wielded wisely." Her words were a paradox. Acceptance and fear wrapped in one. Then I will learn, I said. And I will prove that my shadows can serve this world. A long moment passed. Then, without another word, Twilight dismissed the orb, the light vanishing as suddenly as it had appeared. She studied me once more, and something like approval flickered in her eyes. Very well. You may stay and learn. But know this: any threat to Ponyville, and I will stand against you. The warning was clear and final. I bowed my head slightly in acknowledgement. Understood. As I left the library, the weight of that encounter settled over me like a stone. Twilight Sparkle was no simple opponent or ally. She was a guardian of balance, a test I would have to pass time and again. But I was not afraid. I had Agiris. I had Barrow. And I had the patience to walk the shadows and the light, until I shaped this world in my image. Chapter 6, Bound by Magic and Shadows. The library's silence was both a sanctuary and a cage. Twilight Sparkle had granted me the rare privilege of access to her vast collection of knowledge and magic, but the weight of her gaze lingered in every shadowed corner of the golden oak. I could feel it calm, measured scrutiny that sought to understand the layers beneath my presence. It was a far cry from the raw, unyielding power I commanded with Agiris and Barrow. Here, in the heart of Ponyville's intellect, I was expected to bend, to learn, and to integrate. The first days passed with careful discipline. I pored over tomes of magic and history, drinking in the fundamentals of equestrian magic, the weave of auras, the connection between harmony and power, the laws that bound their spells to intention and emotion. The difference from my own Shadow Monarch powers was stark. My strength came from darkness, an innate force amplified by Agiris and Barrow, raw and brutal. Equestrian magic, by contrast, was subtle, woven through bonds, trust, and balance. I practiced alongside Twilight under her watchful eye. She demonstrated spellcasting with precise gestures and incantations, her horn glowing steadily as she manipulated energy that bent light, summoned protective barriers, and healed wounds. Each spell required intention not just of power but of purpose. The strength of friendship, she said, was the wellspring from which all magic flowed here. I tested what I could replicate, shaping energy, coaxing light and shadow, careful not to break the fragile balance. My attempts often faltered, the rawness of my shadow power fighting against the structured harmony of their magic. Yet Twilight's patience never wavered. It's not just about force, she said once, eyes steady. It's about control. Connection. Connection. A word I wrestled with, its meaning alien but compelling. My past was forged in command, dominance, survival through fear and power. Here, connection was currency. It shaped reality. It made magic possible. To wield it was to weave oneself into the fabric of this world, something I had never done. Still, I was the Shadow Monarch. The dark river flowing beneath the placid surface. That could not be undone. Each evening, I retreated to the orchard, to the solitude of Sweet Apple Acres. There, beneath the heavy boughs laden with ripe fruit, I let Agiris and Barrow's power pulse freely. I pushed their limits, extending shadow tendrils that crept across the earth like living ink, twisting and coiling in response to my will. The strength was immense, far beyond anything in this world, but it came at a cost: the risk of exposing my true nature. The tension between light and dark, between this world's magic and mine, pulled at me relentlessly. Twilight's teachings were a framework, a guide to temper the raw force that simmered beneath my skin. But I knew that ultimate control meant understanding how to blend the two. I sought moments of dialogue with Twilight beyond lessons, careful, probing conversations that tested her views on power, balance, and the nature of shadow. She spoke of harmony not as weakness but as a strength that gave magic purpose and direction. I countered with caution: power unshackled was dangerous, yes, but necessary when threats rose beyond reason. Shadows, she admitted one evening as the sun dipped low, casting long purple hues across the sky, are part of the world, not an enemy. But how they are used defines their nature. I considered that deeply, feeling the familiar burn of Agiris and Barrow, the promise of strength and the peril of losing control. You teach balance, I said quietly. But balance requires sacrifice. I must learn which parts of myself to hold, and which to bend. Twilight nodded, a quiet understanding passing between us. And I will help you. Because this world needs balance between light and shadow, strength and trust. The weeks stretched on. I grew stronger, not just in magic but in understanding. The bonds I forged with Twilight and, through her, with Ponyville's community became threads in the tapestry of my rebirth. I was still the Shadow Monarch, but now I was a monarch tempered by a new kind of power. The greatest lesson was this: strength alone does not command a world. It must be wielded with wisdom and restraint. And that was a truth I intended to master. Chapter 7: Shadows and Light in Quiet Confrontation. The orchard lay in restless quiet beneath a pale dawn, its ripe apples heavy on the branches, the air still thick with the scent of earth and fruit. It was here I sought refuge each morning before the world stirred, the place where I could unshackle the weight of restraint I bore within Twilight Sparkle's library walls. The knowledge I gained there, while invaluable, was only part of the equation. The other part, the raw, primal power of Agiris and Bara, demanded more than study. It demanded mastery beyond books and polite lessons. Here, beneath the endless sky and ancient trees of sweet apple acres, I could push myself in solitude. I flexed my hooves, feeling the black coat ripple with latent energy. The shadows curled around me like living smoke, responding to the subtle commands of my will. Agiris stirred in the depths of my soul, a force born of cold darkness, sharp and unyielding. Bara followed, a heavy presence, raw power tempered with unbreakable resilience. Together, they were a tempest waiting to be unleashed. But my every movement was measured. Too much force risked exposure, too little, stagnation. I extended a hoof slowly, shadow tendrils spilling forth, weaving across the ground. They moved with a strange sentience, responding instantly to my thoughts, twisting and knotting like ink spilled on parchment. The shadows thickened, darkening the grass beneath them, an unnatural stain that shimmered with their presence. I commanded the tendrils upward, shaping them into sharp, jagged spires. The power required was immense, but I did not falter. The ground trembled slightly, the raw force of Agiris and Bara pressing against the limits imposed by this world's magic. The delicate balance I'd learned with Twilight flickered at the edges of my control. The shadows pulsed, threatening to spill beyond my command, hungry and wild. I took a slow breath, willing the tendrils to recede, folding back into the earth like smoke dissolving on the wind. The orchard returned to stillness, save for the faintest ripple where shadow had lingered. This was the first test. How far could I push my powers without fracturing the peace I was sworn to uphold? Without revealing the monstrous strength that simmered beneath my calm exterior? The answer was both clear and maddening. I was stronger than any pony here, but that strength was a weapon as sharp as any blade, capable of destruction on a scale that could unravel the very harmony I needed to survive within. I spent hours moving between shadow and light, experimenting with the limits of Agiris and Bara. I tried weaving minor spells in the style Twilight taught me, attempting to blend their slow, methodical magic with the raw ferocity of my shadow. The results were uneven. Sometimes the light bent smoothly around the darkness, other times, the shadow clashed violently against the harmony, sparking small bursts of uncontrolled energy. One evening, as the sun sank low, I stood beneath a twisted apple tree, shadows pooling thick at my hooves. I summoned a sphere of pure shadow, denser and colder than before. It hummed with latent energy, a promise and a threat. I stretched the sphere outward, letting tendrils of darkness lash through the air, carving shapes that writhed and twisted, responding to my will. The night deepened around me, the contrast stark against the fading light. Then, instinct flared a sound from beyond the orchard, subtle but unmistakable. I froze. The shadows tightened like a coil around my legs. Someone approached. From the dimness emerged a small figure, a changeling scout, cloaked in shifting hues, eyes gleaming with cold calculation. Its intent was clear: reconnaissance, testing, probing. I held the shadow sphere steady, weighing my response. This was no time to reveal the full might of Agiris and Beru. But neither could I afford hesitation. With deliberate control, I allowed a tendril of shadow to extend, brushing the changeling's path like a whisper of cold steel. The creature stopped, sensing the danger, but did not flee. It regarded me with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Who are you?" the changeling's voice echoed, low and hesitant, distorted through its shifting form. I stepped forward, shadows receding but ready to surge. "I am Shredder, protector of this land." The changeling's gaze flickered, weighing my words against the power it felt beneath my skin. "You wield shadows," it said slowly. "Different from ours. Stronger." "I wield what is mine," I replied. "This land has room for many forces." The scout's form shimmered. "You must choose. Ally or enemy?" I considered the question, sensing the broader threat behind it: the changeling hive's constant hunger for power and infiltration. Aligning with them was impossible. Opposing them openly would risk war. "I choose balance," I said firmly. "But I will not tolerate threats to this peace." The changeling hesitated, then vanished into the night with a final glance, a warning or a promise, I could not tell. Alone again, the shadows at my hooves seemed to pulse with renewed energy, as if anticipating the challenges ahead. The test had been subtle but necessary. My powers, while vast, were not limitless here. Strategy and control were my greatest weapons. I spent the following days refining that control, blending Agiris and Beru's shadows with the magic I learned from Twilight, exploring how light and dark could coexist within me without tearing me apart. It was a precarious balance, but it was one I was determined to master. Chapter 8: Threads of Shadow and Light. The days following the encounter with the changeling scout marked a turning point, not only in my understanding of this world but in the complex, fragile connection I was forging with Twilight Sparkle. Our relationship had moved beyond student and teacher, transforming into something less defined yet more vital, a tentative alliance founded on mutual necessity and cautious respect. In her presence, I sensed both challenge and opportunity, a rare balance that mirrored the very tension simmering inside me. We met often beneath the vast canopy of the Golden Oak Library's main chamber, a place where knowledge was both shield and weapon. Twilight was relentless in her pursuit of harmony's principles, yet in our conversations, cracks appeared, brief glimpses of doubt or curiosity about the darkness I carried. I was the shadow that clung to light, the force she both feared and sought to understand. One afternoon, she closed a heavy tome and regarded me thoughtfully. "You've made progress," she said, her voice steady but edged with caution. "Your shadow magic, it's unlike anything I've seen in Equestria. But it frightens some." I nodded. "I am aware. Shadows carry a history that breeds fear. But shadows are not inherently evil. They are part of the whole, necessary." Her eyes softened slightly, as if she wrestled with accepting that truth. "Balance is difficult to maintain. Too much light blinds, too much shadow consumes." I leaned forward, intrigued by the vulnerability behind her words. "And yet you seek to balance them. To find harmony between extremes." "That's the challenge we all face," she replied, folding her hooves on the table. "I wonder, what does your shadow want? What does you want, Shredder?" The question was unexpected, simple yet profound. I hesitated, feeling the weight of memories and power that shaped me. "I want survival," I said finally. "But more than that, I want to shape this world so that it cannot consume me." Twilight's gaze sharpened. "That requires strength and wisdom. You have one, the other is earned." Our conversations became a battleground of philosophy. She spoke of friendship's power, the strength found in unity and trust. I countered with pragmatism the necessity of control, the inevitability of conflict. Yet beneath every debate was an unspoken understanding that neither of us could afford to stand alone. One evening, as twilight bled into night, we walked beneath the stars in sweet apple acres, the orchard silent but alive. The air was cool, shadows deepening around us, and I felt Agiris and Beru stir beneath my skin, a reminder of the power I carried. You walk a dangerous path, Twilight said softly. Power like yours can save or destroy. How will you choose? I looked up at the endless sky, searching for answers in constellations I had no name for. I will choose survival first. Then, I will choose what comes after. Her hand brushed briefly against mine, a rare touch that spoke volumes. You are not alone in this. Ponyville will stand with you, if you allow it. I turned to meet her eyes, the tension between us taut but fragile. Trust is earned, Twilight. But I am willing to try. That night, as I lay beneath the stars, I understood the gravity of the choice before me. The Shadow Monarch reborn in Equestria, caught between light and darkness, power and restraint, isolation and connection. The threads of shadow and light were weaving a new path. One I would walk carefully, with strength and patience. Chapter 9, Shadows and Light United. The tension in the air was thick, charged with the unease that had been growing beneath Ponyville's placid surface for weeks. Twilight and I had spent countless hours weaving our understanding together, her magic and ideals blending with my shadows and pragmatism. Yet, beneath our cautious alliance, I knew the fragile peace could shatter at any moment. The attack came without warning. It began as a distant roar echoing through the hills, a sound foreign and unnatural. I was in the orchard, stretching the boundaries of Agiris and Beru's power, when the ground trembled beneath my hooves. Twilight's voice echoed in my mind, sharp and urgent. Shredder, something's coming. We have to act. I released the shadows, the dark tendrils recoiling as I focused. Show me. The sky darkened suddenly as a swarm of changelings descended, more numerous, more aggressive than any scout I had encountered. Their bodies shimmered, shifting through forms, eyes glowing with hunger and malice. They surged forward, intent clear: invade, consume, conquer. I met Twilight's determined gaze. We stand together. She nodded, horn glowing bright as she began weaving a complex spell, light and harmony intertwined, a shield rising to meet the swarm's assault. The changelings struck with ferocity, but our combined defenses held. I summoned shadows thick and suffocating, tendrils whipping through the attackers with deadly precision. Agiris's cold fury and Beru's crushing force unleashed in calculated bursts, carving space for Twilight's magic to mend and protect. Shredder! Twilight called out, dodging a lashing changeling. Your shadows use them to contain, not just attack. I adjusted, weaving the darkness into cages, immovable walls of shadow that trapped the invaders without destroying them outright. Containment over destruction. Understood. As the battle raged, I noticed a younger changeling breaking away from the swarm, attempting to flank us. I moved swiftly, shadow sweeping forward, encasing it before it could strike. The creature hissed, trapped but alive. Twilight's eyes met mine, respect and relief mingling in their depths. Your control is impressive. I am learning, I replied, breath steady despite the chaos. Together, we pushed the changelings back, their numbers thinning as the shadows and light worked in tandem. The battle was fierce but brief enough to remind Ponyville of the dangers lurking beyond their borders. When silence finally fell, the orchard was scarred, but the threat contained. Twilight turned to me, exhaustion clear but her voice steady. Today, we were stronger because we stood together. I nodded, the weight of victory tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. Our alliance is necessary. But so is vigilance. She smiled faintly. Agreed. Ponyville has a new guardian in you. Her words struck a chord deep within. I was no longer a lone shadow stalking the light. I was part of something greater, a force to protect rather than dominate. But the shadows remained, waiting, watching. And I would be ready. Chapter 10, Quiet after the storm. The orchard's scent was heavy in the cool morning air, a mixture of crushed apples and damp earth. The scars from the battle with the changeling swarm were subtle but unmistakable: broken branches, trampled grass, the faint black stains of my shadow magic lingering on the ground like a stubborn shadow refusing to fade. I walked among the ruins, the weight of the fight still pressing in my chest, a dull ache beneath the surface. Applejack was already there when I arrived, her strong silhouette framed by the morning light. She stood near a cluster of apple trees, examining the damage with a furrowed brow. Her presence was steady, an anchor in the chaos. "You all right?" she called, voice rough but concerned. I approached slowly, keeping my tone even. "I am. The battle was necessary." She nodded, eyes sharp. "Necessary, sure. But it don't make it any easier seeing this place torn up." I studied her face, the lines of worry, the quiet strength that never faltered. "Peace is fragile. I fear this is only the beginning of what Ponyville must face." Applejack wiped her muzzle on her foreleg and looked at me directly. "I been thinkin'. You showed a lot of power yesterday, power most ponies here ain't used to seeing." I met her gaze without flinching. "Power is a tool. How it is used defines the wielder." She exhaled slowly, voice low. "That's what worries some around here. They're scared you're too different. Too dangerous." I considered her words carefully. "Fear often masks uncertainty. Trust must be earned." Applejack's jaw tightened, a flicker of frustration flashing in her eyes. "Yeah, well, some don't have time for trust. They want answers. Proof you're here to protect, not to rule." The tension between us was real, born from concern for the town and the shadow that followed me like a second skin. Yet beneath it, I sensed a growing respect, a recognition of the burden I carried. I took a breath, choosing my words with care. "I do not seek dominion. I seek survival and balance. Ponyville has offered me both." She looked away briefly, then back. "Good. Because if you ever cross that line, I will be stopped," I finished for her. Her nod was curt but firm. "Damn right." We walked through the orchard together, the silence between us weighted but not uncomfortable. Finally, she spoke again. "You ever think about why you're here? Not just the power, but why this place?" The question lingered in the air, simple yet profound. I hesitated. "I do not know for certain. But I believe this world offers a chance to forge a new path, one that blends shadow with light." Applejack smiled faintly, a warmth that touched her eyes. "That sounds mighty hopeful. Guess Ponyville could use someone like you." I allowed myself a small smile, rare and genuine. "Perhaps." The orchard around us seemed quieter now, the battle's echoes fading into memory. Yet the future was uncertain, shadowed by threats both seen and unseen. But I was no longer alone. And for the first time since my rebirth, that was enough. Chapter 11, Echoes of Doubt and Resolve. The morning air in Ponyville carried a chill that hinted at the coming change of seasons. Leaves rustled gently in the breeze, brushing against the wooden facades of quaint homes and shop fronts, but beneath the calm surface, unease simmered a tension that was impossible to ignore. The aftermath of the changeling attack lingered in whispered conversations and sidelong glances, and the presence of a black-coated pony with shadow powers me had unsettled more than a few hearts. Today, the center of that tension gathered in the town hall, a modest building framed by blooming flowers and worn cobblestones. Inside, a crowd of ponies filled the wooden benches, their expressions ranging from guarded curiosity to outright suspicion. The air was thick with expectation as I stepped into the room, the weight of their gazes pressing against me like an invisible force. Applejack was already there, her familiar figure standing near the front, a steadying presence amid the murmurs. She caught my eye and gave a brief nod, a silent gesture of support, and I returned it with a measured calm. Mayor Mare sat behind a carved podium, her eyes flickering with worry as she tapped a hoof against the polished wood. "Thank you all for gathering on such short notice," she began, her voice clear but strained. Recent events have shaken our community. The attack was unexpected, and though we were spared greater harm, questions remain. She paused, scanning the room until her gaze settled on me. We have a new resident among us, a pony with unusual abilities who stood alongside us in defense. Shredder. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some curious, others wary. Mayor continued, given the nature of these events, we must address concerns about security, loyalty, and the future of Ponyville. The room's atmosphere shifted palpably. I stepped forward, muscles tensed but voice steady. I understand your concerns. The attack exposed vulnerabilities, and it revealed threats we must face united. A skeptical voice cut through the murmurs. How can we trust you? Your powers, they're unlike anything we've seen. Shadow magic isn't something we understand. I met the speaker's eyes, recognizing the fear behind the challenge. Fear is natural when faced with the unknown. But power itself is neither good nor evil. It is how it is wielded that defines it. Another pony, a slender unicorn with an intense gaze, spoke next. If you claim to protect us, why keep your true abilities hidden? Why not reveal your full strength so we can trust you completely? I allowed a small, controlled sigh. Revealing too much too soon invites fear and resistance. I have learned that patience and discretion build trust stronger than displays of force. Applejack stepped forward, her voice firm. I've seen Shredder fight. I've seen the control he has over that power. He's no threat to Ponyville, he's a protector. A few nods followed her words, though unease remained etched on many faces. Mayor raised a hoof to quiet the room. This is a start. But we need a plan, a way to ensure that Ponyville remains safe. Shredder, what do you propose? I considered carefully. We must build defenses that combine strengths. Your magic, your community's bonds, and my shadows. Together, we can create barriers no single force could withstand. A young earth pony spoke up, brow furrowed. What about those who don't trust you? Who see your shadow as a threat? I met his gaze steadily. Trust is earned through action, not words. I will continue to prove myself by protecting this land, by standing with you, not over you. The room fell into a heavy silence. Then, one by one, hesitant voices echoed agreement. The path forward was uncertain, but it was one we would walk together. After the meeting dispersed, Applejack caught up with me outside, the tension in her stance softened by the day's progress. You did good in there, she said quietly. But don't think all doubts are gone. I nodded. I know. Shadows are hard to chase away. She smiled, a flicker of warmth in her eyes. Maybe. But sometimes, shadows show where the light is strongest. I let her words settle as we walked toward the orchard's edge, the weight of the day pressing against me, but with it, a fragile hope. Chapter 12, Threads Among Friends. The evening settled slowly over Ponyville, the sky painted with the soft oranges and purples of twilight bleeding into night. The air was crisp, filled with the scents of blooming flowers and the distant warmth of wood smoke from cozy hearths. It was a world away from the cold shadows that stirred beneath my skin, yet here I stood at Twilight Sparkle's side, facing a group that could shape the very fate of this land. Her friends. The main six. Names I had learned carefully over time: Applejack, Rainbow Dash, Rarity, Pinkie Pie, Fluttershy and Twilight herself. Each a pillar of this world, each carrying a strength as distinct and complex as the elements they embodied. And now, I was to stand among them not as an outsider, but as an uneasy ally, a shadow walking alongside the light. We gathered in Twilight's library, the room bathed in soft lamplight and the subtle hum of magic lingering in the air. Twilight had convened the meeting after the attack, sensing the need to unify the strongest forces Ponyville could offer. The others arrived in turn, their expressions curious and wary as they regarded me. Rainbow Dash was the first to speak, her eyes sharp, challenge clear. So, you're the Shadow Monarch everyone's been talking about? Not exactly what I expected. I met her gaze without flinching. The Shadow Monarch reborn, yes. I am called Shredder. Rarity, ever graceful, raised an eyebrow. Your presence is striking. But power alone does not define one's character. Pinkie Pie bounced forward with her usual exuberance, voice bright. Ooh! Are you going to throw a party? Because parties fix everything. I allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile. A party would be interesting. But for now, we face greater challenges. Fluttershy lingered near the back, eyes gentle but guarded. I don't know much about shadows. But I believe everyone deserves kindness. Applejack, familiar and steady, gave me a nod. I trust Shredder. He stood with us when it counted. Twilight stepped forward, the room settling under her calm authority. We're here because we need to understand one another. Shredder's powers are unlike any we've seen, but that means we must learn how to work together. I inclined my head. I have much to learn. But also much to offer. The conversation turned quickly to the changeling threat, the scars the attack had left on Ponyville's peace, and the uncertain future. Each friend spoke with conviction, Rainbow Dash with fiery determination, Rarity with careful strategy, Pinkie Pie's optimism balancing Fluttershy's gentle concern. Rainbow Dash's voice cut through. If we're going to stand against the changelings, we need to be faster, stronger, smarter. Shredder, can your shadows help us do that? I considered the question carefully. My shadows can conceal, protect, and strike with precision. But they require control and coordination. Alone, they are dangerous. Together, with your strengths, they can be an asset. Rarity's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Control is key. Power without finesse is reckless. Pinkie Pie clapped her hooves excitedly. Ooh! Like a dance. Shadows and light, working together. Fluttershy smiled softly. If it means keeping everyone safe, I'm willing to try. Applejack nodded. We all gotta pull our weight. Twilight's gaze held mine steady. Then we start with training, learning to blend our abilities, understand our limits, and trust each other. The weight of that statement pressed into me. Trust was a fragile thing, one I had learned to wield carefully. But here, among these ponies, it was a thread that could bind shadows and light into something new. As the evening deepened, we talked long into the night, sharing stories, strategies, even small personal truths. I found myself drawn into the fabric of their camaraderie, each voice a strand weaving into a greater whole. Rarity spoke of beauty and grace not just in appearance but in action. Pinkie Pie's laughter lifted the room's heaviness. Rainbow Dash's determination sparked a fire I hadn't expected. Fluttershy's quiet kindness offered a balm to old wounds. Applejack's steady honesty was an anchor. And Twilight's wisdom guided us all. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine a future where my shadows were not a curse but a part of this light, where power and trust coexisted. Yet beneath the surface, I remained vigilant, aware that in a world built on harmony, shadows could be both shield and sword. And I would need both. Chapter 13, Shadows and Bonds in Motion. The glow of morning filtered softly through the stained glass windows of Twilight's library, casting fragmented hues across the polished wood floor where we had gathered. The air was thick with quiet anticipation. No one spoke of past deeds or distant legends, just the moment, the power that simmered beneath calm exteriors, and the challenge ahead. Since that evening when I met the main six, the fragile threads of alliance had begun to weave slowly but deliberately. Now, we stood at the precipice of something new, training. Not just for strength, but for trust. For understanding. For the first time since my rebirth, I would test the balance between the shadow I wielded and the light they bore. All right, Twilight's voice cut clean through the stillness, commanding yet patient. We need to learn how to work together. Shredder, why don't you start by showing us how your shadows move? What they can do? I nodded once, deliberate. The shadows are an extension of my will. They conceal, protect, and can strike with precision. But their power is wild if left unchecked. I flexed my hooves slowly, focusing inward. The dark energy rippled, gathering at my feet first, a living pool of ink pooling outward. The shadows stirred like serpents, then rose in tendrils, curling around my legs before extending toward the far wall. Rainbow Dash's eyes narrowed. That's pretty slick. Can you make them move faster? More aggressively. I inclined my head. Speed and force require greater focus, and risk loss of control. I will demonstrate. With a subtle shift, the tendrils snapped forward, lashing the wall with sharp strikes that left faint burn marks but no damage beyond the surface. The room pulsed with energy, raw and restrained. Applejack stepped forward. That's impressive. But how do you keep it from getting out of hand? I don't want to see anyone hurt who ain't a threat. I turned toward her, voice measured. Discipline is key. Shadows respond to thought and emotion. Calm focus guides them, anger or panic causes chaos. Fluttershy's voice broke the silence, gentle but concerned. That sounds hard. How do you stay calm when things get dangerous? I met her soft gaze, sensing genuine curiosity and wariness. Years of practice and necessity. The shadows are part of me, but I must control them, not let them control me. Twilight nodded approvingly. That control will be vital. Now, let's see how we can blend our abilities. One by one, the others stepped forward. Rainbow Dash took the lead, her wings stirring a breeze as she zipped in arcs, practicing dodges around the shadow tendrils I wove. I adjusted the shadow's movement to anticipate her swift maneuvers, learning to shape their reach without impeding her flight. Rarity followed, her magic delicately manipulating threads of light to intertwine with my darkness, creating shimmering shapes where shadow and glow met without clashing. Pinkie Pie bounded about, her laughter echoing as she spun and ducked beneath curling shadows, testing their flexibility and timing. It's like playing tag with the night. Applejack moved with steady purpose, testing the protective aspects, shadows wrapping gently around her, forming a barrier as I lifted a tendril to catch a thrown apple before it hit the ground. Fluttershy hesitated before moving slowly, her connection to nature palpable. I lowered the shadows, allowing soft tendrils to curl lightly around her without pressure, and she relaxed, moving within the dark embrace without fear. Throughout, Twilight observed closely, occasionally weaving her own magic into the exercise light barriers, enchantments that complemented the shadows, creating a complex dance of power. This is more than training, Twilight said softly during a break. It's about trust. You're all learning to rely on something unfamiliar. Rainbow Dash grinned, wiping sweat from her brow. Yeah, and I gotta admit, at first I thought shadows were just spooky stuff. But Shredder's got control and that counts. Rarity smiled, adjusting her mane. The elegance of combining light and dark, it's quite beautiful when done properly. Pinkie Pie bounced on her hooves. And fun. Shadows can be funny if you let them. Applejack gave a rare chuckle. Never thought I'd say it, but this shadow stuff might just fit in around here. Fluttershy nodded, eyes bright. It's like they're not so scary when you understand them. I felt the subtle shifts in their perceptions, a gradual breaking down of fear and suspicion. The shadows that once set me apart were becoming threads binding us together. Yet beneath it all, I remained cautious. The main six did not and could not know I was reborn. My memories of another life stayed locked within me, a secret buried deep beneath the surface. Here, I was Shredder, the pony of shadow and strength, forging a new destiny. As the day drew to a close, Twilight gathered us once more. We've made progress, but this is only the beginning, she said. Training like this will prepare us, but the real test will come when threats rise again. I met each of their eyes in turn. Then we prepare, I said quietly. Together. The shadows curled and folded around my hooves, a living symbol of power restrained by purpose. And as the stars blinked awake overhead, I felt the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, even shadows could find their place in the light. Chapter 14, Trial by Fire and Shadow. The sun hung low, casting long, sharp shadows over Ponyville as we resumed training near the orchard's edge. The quiet hum of evening was interrupted only by the soft rustle of leaves and the rhythmic thud of hooves on grass. The main six gathered, anticipation and determination evident in their expressions. Our recent sessions had built not only skill but a tenuous trust, a fragile lattice of cooperation we would soon have to test against the real threats lurking beyond the town's borders. "All right," Twilight said, her voice calm but edged with urgency. "Today, we push beyond exercises. We'll simulate an attack. Everyone, stay sharp." I nodded, shadows gathering darkly at my hooves like ink spilling across parchment. Ijiri's and Beru thrummed within me, their power quiet but alive, ready. Rainbow Dash stretched her wings, eyes bright. "Bring it on. I'm ready for anything." Applejack cracked her knuckles. "No holding back." The others exchanged nods, their resolve steady. Suddenly, a disturbance shattered the calm, an unnatural ripple in the air, a shimmer of shifting forms. Without warning, a group of changelings burst from the nearby trees, their insectal bodies slick and black, eyes glowing with cruel hunger. Their ranks were smaller than before, but their aggression was immediate and fierce. "Attack!" Rainbow Dash shouted, dashing forward with a streak of azure, wings slicing the air as she aimed to disrupt the swarm's advance. I released tendrils of shadow, weaving them tightly to form barriers and snares that lanced outward to block the changelings' paths. The shadows moved with fluid grace, bending around the ponies to shield them while striking with precision. "Watch the flanks," I warned, sensing a pair of changelings attempting to circle behind. Applejack spun, boots digging into the earth as she caught an attacker mid-leap with a powerful strike, sending it crashing into the dirt. "Not on my watch." Rarity's horn glowed bright, elegant streams of magic arcing to bind a group of changelings in sparkling chains. "I shall not let them tarnish our home." Pinkie Pie bounded about, laughter ringing even amid battle. "Time to party changeling style." Fluttershy moved with surprising courage, her connection to the creatures around us coaxing birds and small animals to harass the attackers, buying us precious moments. Twilight coordinated the defense, her magic weaving a dome of light that shimmered protectively over the group. The battle escalated quickly. One changeling lunged toward Fluttershy, its jaw snapping dangerously close, but I was there, shadow tendrils whipping forward to intercept, wrapping the attacker tightly. "Easy," I murmured, tightening the bonds until it ceased struggling. The main six rallied around me, their attacks synchronizing with the shadows in a deadly ballet. Yet as the fight dragged on, the changelings adapted, shifting tactics with alarming speed. Rainbow Dash growled, "They're learning." I agreed silently. "We must adapt faster." The shadows deepened, extending farther, more agile. I wove them into spears and nets, guiding their movement with precise thought, blending defense and offense. Applejack grunted, wiping sweat from her brow. "Shredder, your shadows, they're like extensions of the others' attacks. We can work with that." "Exactly," I said, voice low. "But I must remain focused. One lapse could mean disaster." Suddenly, a larger changeling broke through the defenses, charging with brutal force. Twilight's shield faltered under the impact. "Behind you!" I shouted, and without hesitation, I sent a whip of shadow racing to intercept, striking the attacker's flank. The creature howled, momentarily stunned. Rarity seized the moment, binding it in radiant chains, while Applejack delivered the finishing blow. The remaining changelings faltered, their cohesion broken. One by one, they retreated into the shadows from which they had come. As silence fell, the group exhaled collectively, breaths heavy but victorious. Twilight turned to me, eyes shining with a mix of relief and pride. You held your own and helped us hold the line. Rainbow Dash cracked a grin. You weren't kidding about those shadows. They saved my flank more than once. Applejack's expression was unreadable for a moment, then softened. You earned your place here today. Pinkie Pie bounced excitedly. That was so much fun. Can we do it again? Fluttershy smiled softly, still catching her breath. Thank you, Shredder. I allowed a faint smile to touch my lips, the momentary warmth easing the shadow's chill inside. We are stronger together, I said quietly. But this was only a trial. Twilight nodded solemnly. There will be more. We must be ready. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the orchard in Twilight's embrace, I felt the weight of that truth settle deeply. The shadows within me were not just tools, they were part of who I was. But here, among these ponies, they could be wielded in service of something greater. The battle had tested us, not just our strength, but our ability to trust, to blend light and shadow into a shield for this fragile world. And for now, we had passed. Chapter 15, Aftermath and Plans Forged in Shadow. The orchard was quiet now, the twilight settling deep and thick around the battered branches and trampled earth. The fight had passed, but its echoes lingered in the air, a tension that pulsed like a living thing, reminding us all that the danger beyond Ponyville's borders was far from over. We gathered once more beneath the skeletal limbs of an ancient apple tree, the place where training had begun and where our fragile alliance had been tested in fire and shadow. The glow from Twilight's horn cast long, soft beams that danced over the faces of my companions, each etched with fatigue, determination, and an unspoken bond forged in battle. Twilight broke the silence first, her voice steady but heavy with urgency. That was our first real test. You all fought well. But we can't afford to be complacent. The changelings are adapting, becoming more aggressive. Rainbow Dash stretched her wings, eyes still sharp despite exhaustion. Yeah, they learned fast. We have to be faster. Applejack's voice was low, practical. And smarter. We can't just go in swinging every time. Rarity adjusted a strand of her mane thoughtfully. The magic they wielded was more coordinated this time. Our defenses need to be tighter, more elegant. Pinkie Pie bounced on her hooves, enthusiasm undimmed. Maybe we can surprise them next time with something totally unexpected. Fluttershy gave a small nod, her eyes reflecting concern. We need to protect the innocent, too. The townsfolk, the animals, they must be safe. I stepped forward, the shadows at my hooves still pulsing faintly, a reminder of the power that had turned the tide. Our strength lies not only in individual power but in our ability to combine forces. The shadows and your magic, your skills and determination together, they are more than the sum of their parts. Twilight smiled slightly. That's what I've been hoping for. We need to develop tactics that blend our abilities seamlessly. Rainbow Dash grinned. Like a team. A really fast, really dangerous team. Applejack nodded in agreement. And one that watches each other's backs. Rarity glanced at me thoughtfully. Shredder, your control of shadows is remarkable, but it demands concentration. How can we help you maintain focus during a battle? I considered her question carefully. Calm and coordination among allies ease my burden. When I trust my companions to hold their positions and act with purpose, the shadows respond more readily to my will. Fluttershy smiled softly. So, by working closely together, we can all be stronger. Pinkie Pie clapped her hooves. Teamwork makes the dream work. Twilight's eyes shone with resolve. We should begin drills that incorporate both offensive and defensive coordination. We need to anticipate the changelings' moves and adapt in real time. I nodded slowly. Agreed. Additionally, I will teach you how to recognize and respond to the shadow's signals, the subtle shifts that warn of danger or opportunity. Rainbow Dash raised an eyebrow. You mean like shadow body language? Precisely, I replied. The shadows communicate as extensions of my awareness. Applejack smirked. Sounds like you're teaching us a whole new language. It is a language of movement and intent, I said. Mastering it will improve our efficiency and safety. Rarity folded her hooves, eyes gleaming. Then let us begin. The sooner we learn, the better. Pinkie Pie giggled. I can't wait to see what surprises shadows have for us. Fluttershy's voice was calm but steady. I'll do my best to listen and learn. Twilight's gaze settled on me. This alliance between your shadows and our strengths is our best hope. The night deepened around us, wrapping the orchard in quiet. I felt the steady beat of Agiris and Beru within me, their power no longer a solitary force but a thread woven into the fabric of this group. For the first time since my arrival in this world, I was not alone. We would grow stronger. We would become a force that neither light nor shadow could face alone. And Ponyville would endure. Chapter 16, Shadows Awakened and Bonds Tested. The orchard had settled into a stillness that felt almost sacred beneath the pale light of a waxing moon. The battle from days before lingered in memory, but now it was time to deepen our understanding not just of each other, but of the very forces that shaped this fragile alliance. Twilight had arranged for us to meet again, this time to push the boundaries of what we could achieve together. It was a chance for me to bring forth the true power hidden within me, Agiris and Beru, and see how they might shape the future of Ponyville. As the main six assembled beneath the sprawling limbs of an ancient apple tree, I felt the familiar stir of something vast and dark beneath my black coat. Agiris whispered like a shadowy gale, while Beru thrummed like a heavy drumbeat within my chest. Their power was immense, but here, it demanded careful release. Twilight's eyes glinted with both excitement and caution. Shredder, we've seen glimpses of your shadow's strength, but you've never fully summoned what you can command. When you're ready, show us. I nodded, careful to keep my voice calm. The powers I wield come with great responsibility. Agiris and Beru are more than shadows, they are forces. Their presence can shift the balance. Applejack stepped closer, her brow furrowed. We're ready. Just don't let it overwhelm you or us. I allowed the tension inside me to ease. Slowly, I lowered my head, closing my eyes, and called upon the depths. The air around us grew colder, heavier, as shadows writhed and thickened at my hooves. From the darkness, forms began to emerge, two figures, immense and imposing, Agiris, a sinewy force of sharp edges and shifting darkness, Beru, a hulking mass of raw power and unyielding strength. The orchard's quiet shattered under their arrival, yet I controlled their presence carefully, holding them tethered to my will. Twilight stepped back, awe evident in her voice. They're incredible. Rainbow Dash's jaw dropped. Those things are massive. How do you control them? I turned my gaze toward her. Discipline and trust. They respond to my intent and calm focus. Rarity circled the shadows, eyes wide. Such contrast, Agiris so fluid and sharp, Beru so solid and heavy. It's like two sides of the same coin. Pinkie Pie bounced excitedly. Can they dance? Do shadows dance? I allowed a slight smile. Their movements are precise and purposeful, not frivolous. But I can show you. With a subtle gesture, Agiris shifted, extending a tendril that swept low across the ground like liquid night, then recoiled with the speed of a striking serpent. Beru responded with a deep rumble, raising an arm that smashed into the earth, sending vibrations through the soil. Applejack's eyes narrowed with focus. That power's raw. How do you keep it from tearing everything apart? Through connection, I said. I am their anchor and their guide. Without that, they are chaos. Twilight stepped forward. Can we work with them? Can we train alongside Agiris and Beru? I met her gaze steadily. It will require trust between you, and between you and me. I will not let them harm those who stand with me. Fluttershy hesitated but nodded slowly. I want to try. if it helps keep Ponyville safe. Over the next hours, I guided the main 6 in exercises designed to build that trust. I taught them to read the subtle signals Agiris and Beru sent, the flicker of a shadow tendril, the tremor of earth beneath Beru's foot, the patterns in their movement. Rainbow Dash laughed breathlessly after a near Mississippi with a shadow whip. Okay, this is way harder than I thought, but also kinda awesome. Rarity carefully manipulated a strand of light to intertwine with a shadow tendril, eyes shining. The contrast makes each stand out more clearly. Pinkie Pie giggled as she darted through shadow and light, twirling and dodging. It's like a spooky game. Applejack kept her eyes sharp, hands steady as she practiced with Beru's protective barriers. Feels like having a steel wall on your side. Fluttershy moved cautiously but grew more confident with each step, guided by the gentle presence of Agiris's shifting forms. Twilight observed, occasionally lending her magic to balance and support. This is progress. But remember, power without control can destroy everything we fight for. As the night deepened, the group's exhaustion mingled with exhilaration. I felt the connection growing, shadows and light weaving into a new pattern, a promise of strength forged not in solitude, but in unity. When the session ended, Twilight approached me quietly. You carried more than power today, you carried hope. I nodded, the weight inside me lighter for the first time in a long while. Hope is a fragile thing, but necessary. Agiris and Beru are part of that. Together, we are stronger. The shadows curled gently at my hooves, a living reminder that even the darkest forces could find their place in the light if guided by purpose, trust, and careful hands. Chapter 17, Shadows and Strategy in Tandem. The weight of Agiris and Beru's presence still thrummed beneath my coat as the night's training session came to a close. Twilight's soft praise echoed in my mind, hope, fragile but necessary, yet I knew the road ahead was far from easy. Strength alone would not guarantee survival. Strategy, coordination, and sacrifice would shape the future of Ponyville's defense. The next morning dawned with an air of purpose. Twilight gathered us again in the library, the warm glow of morning spilling through windows lined with ancient tomes. The main 6 were already assembled, their faces a mixture of fatigue from recent battles and keen anticipation. I think we all learned a lot last night, Twilight began, folding her hooves neatly. But raw power won't be enough. We need a plan, something that uses everyone's strengths and covers our weaknesses. I stepped forward, shadows gathering subtly around my hooves. Agiris and Beru are vast powers, but I cannot be everywhere at once. To assist, I have summoned several shadow entities, lesser constructs, to scout and engage. They are expendable. Their purpose is exploration and diversion. Pinkie Pie's eyes widened dramatically. Expendable? Shredder, that sounds so cruel. How could you send others to risk, to maybe die? That's evil. I met her gaze, calm but firm. Sacrifice is difficult but sometimes necessary. These constructs have no will beyond my command. Their loss does not cost me as much as risking you. Applejack folded her forelegs. Better that than putting ponies in harm's way without backup. Fluttershy looked uneasy. But, there still lives, even if not like ours. They are shadows given form, I explained. They cannot suffer, feel, or fear. They serve as eyes and hands in places too dangerous for you. Rainbow Dash crossed her forelegs, skeptical. Sounds like a shadow army. In a way, I admitted. But one that acts on my will and nothing more. Rarity's eyes glittered with curiosity. And these entities, how do they interact with the others? Can they coordinate with Ponyville's defenders? Yes, I said, a trace of pride in my voice. They respond to commands and signals. Their presence allows us to extend our reach and react faster. Twilight nodded. We can use them to gather intel and soften threats before they reach the town. Pinkie Pie stomped a hoof, her drama undiminished. Still, it sounds dark. Like you're sending little shadows to their doom. I let out a quiet chuckle. I understand your concern. But it is a necessary part of war and protection. Pinky threw her hooves in the air. Shredder, you're so cruel. You make me want to throw a feelings party just to cheer everyone up. The room broke into laughter, easing the tension. Twilight raised a hoof to call attention back. Let's focus. Shredder, can you show us these constructs? I lowered my head briefly, drawing power from the shadows beneath me. Forms began to coalesce, dark, shifting shapes with no face or voice, sleek and silent. They moved with purpose, circling the room before aligning in formation. Meet the scouts, I said simply. Applejack eyed them warily. And you're telling us these things won't turn on us? They are bound to my will, I assured her. They cannot act without command. Rainbow Dash raised a wing. All right, then. Let's see what these scouts can do. I nodded, extending a tendril of shadow toward the nearest scout. You will explore the eastern border, report any movement or danger. Others will monitor the northern and western approaches. The scouts dispersed silently, slipping through walls and windows like living smoke. Fluttershy whispered, "They're beautiful, in a strange way." Rarity agreed softly. The contrast of darkness so alive it's oddly captivating. As we watched the scouts vanish into the early morning mist, Twilight turned to me. This changes everything. With eyes beyond our reach, we can anticipate threats and respond before they reach Ponyville. Pinkie Pie bounced anxiously. But what if they get hurt? Or lost? They cannot be lost, I said. And their purpose is to protect you all, even if it means they do not return. Pinkie's voice lowered. Shredder, you really are cruel. The group laughed again, but beneath the humor was a dawning understanding. This new level of strategy required sacrifice, discipline, and trust. Twilight's gaze settled on all of us. We will train with these scouts. Learn to read their signals and incorporate them into our defenses. Together, we are stronger. Applejack smirked. Looks like shadows just became part of Ponyville. I allowed myself a small nod. And with them, we will stand prepared for whatever comes. Chapter 18, Shadows Dispersed, Eyes Unseen. The dawn stretched across the horizon, spilling pale light over Ponyville's rolling fields and forests, but today the air was charged with something else: anticipation, purpose, and a quiet determination that settled heavily on my shoulders. The time had come to extend our watch beyond the orchard and town borders. Twilight and the main six gathered with me early, the gravity of our mission reflected in their steady gazes. Today, we deploy the scouts in full, I began, voice low and measured. Approximately 400 shadow constructs will be dispersed across the outer and inner edges of Ponyville's borders. Their task is surveillance, early detection, and coordination. Twilight's eyes flickered with the weight of that number. 400. That's a massive network. Applejack nodded, her expression sharp. Enough to cover every inch and then some. How are they grouped? I spread my hooves slightly, tracing invisible lines in the air. On the outer edge, scouts will be deployed in pairs every milli. The space is designed so that any pair encountering a threat can call for immediate reinforcement from neighboring pairs within seconds. In the inner perimeter, coverage is denser: 3 groups of 2 per mile, allowing for faster response times and layered security. Rainbow Dash stretched her wings, enthusiasm barely contained. That means if any trouble comes near Ponyville, backup's already on the way before they know what hit 'em. Pinkie Pie clapped excitedly. It's like having invisible party guests everywhere. Rarity smiled, but a hint of concern lingered. Coordination on this scale requires flawless communication. How do the scouts stay connected? The shadows are linked, I explained. Each scout sends and receives signals through subtle changes in shadow form and vibration, almost like a language of movement. Their networks overlap, allowing rapid relays until the alert reaches a central node, either myself or one of you. Fluttershy's eyes widened. So they're like a giant web, watching over everything. Exactly, Twilight confirmed. And that web can tighten instantly when a threat is detected. Applejack's practical tone cut through the wonder. Sounds good in theory, but what about real threats? What if they get overwhelmed? I met her steady gaze. If scouts encounter danger beyond their capacity, they immediately signal for backup. Neighboring groups respond instantly. The structure ensures multiple layers of defense, buying time until we or others can arrive. Rainbow Dash grinned. I like the sound of that. It's teamwork on a whole new level. We spent the morning moving through the deployment plan with meticulous care. I summoned pairs of shadow scouts, releasing them silently into the air like drifting smoke. One by one, they slipped into the surrounding woods, fields, and hills 2 by 2, disappearing into the distance with no sound save for a faint ripple in the air. 400 scouts, I repeated softly, watching the last pair dissolve into the shadows at the orchard's edge. An unseen army watching, ready. Pinkie Pie tugged on my coat, her voice dramatic. Shredder, you're like the shadow master of all. But doesn't it feel lonely, sending all your creations out like that? I let the question hang, considering the weight of my command. It is necessary. They do not feel loneliness or fear, but I acknowledge your concern. Fluttershy nodded gently. It's a big responsibility. Rarity smoothed her mane. And one we must honor by acting wisely. Twilight's voice broke through the growing quiet. Now, we wait and watch. The scouts will keep us informed. Hours passed as we remained in the library, monitoring the soft signals the scouts sent back. Small flickers of movement in the shadows, minor disturbances reported with precise detail. The web held strong. Then, a ripple of tension passed through the room as a signal came. A scout near the northern border detected an unknown presence moving swiftly through the trees. Alert, I said sharply. Northern pair requesting immediate backup. Rainbow Dash was already on her hooves. I'm on it. Let's move. Applejack grabbed her hat, eyes narrowed. We go together. Twilight rose, horn glowing. I will support with magic. Pinkie Pie bounced eagerly, though concern flickered in her eyes. Be careful, everyone. The group moved swiftly through the orchard, shadows stretching with us ready, waiting. The layered network of scouts thrummed beneath us, a silent sentinel watching every step. Remember, I said, voice low but firm, this is a test of our coordination. Stay close, trust the scouts, and communicate constantly. As we approached the reported location, the tension grew palpable, each step measured, every sense alert. The scouts had already formed a perimeter, shadows weaving through branches, creating barriers and watching for movement. Suddenly, a figure darted into view, a changeling, swift and wary, unaware it was surrounded. Rainbow Dash took the lead, wings beating fiercely. Gotcha! But I raised a hoof. Wait! I summoned tendrils of shadow, weaving a net that closed silently, cutting off escape without harm. Twilight's voice was steady. Contain, don't harm. We want information. Applejack moved forward, steady and sure. No need for a fight if it don't come to it. The changeling hissed but was trapped, eyes wide with surprise. Pinkie Pie exhaled dramatically. Shredder, you're so merciless, catching things without a fight. I allowed a faint smile. Control is necessary. Mercy when possible. We stood watch as Twilight prepared a spell to extract information safely. The network of scouts remained alert around us, backup ready at a moment's notice. As calm settled again, Twilight turned to me. This is the future of Ponyville's defense. Shadows watching, ponies ready, and threats contained before they grow. I nodded slowly, the weight of command still heavy but tempered by the unity around me. We will continue, I said quietly. Together. Chapter 19, Strategy in Shadows and Light. The morning light spilled through the windows of the Golden Oak Library, filling the room with warmth and clarity. The soft rustle of pages and murmurs of focused voices surrounded me as the main six and I gathered once more, this time not just as fighters or trainees, but as strategists. The intelligence gathered by the scouts had been streaming steadily throughout the night, a silent flow of shadows weaving through Ponyville's borders and beyond. Twilight Sparkle stood at the front, her horn glowing faintly as she projected a shimmering map of Ponyville and its surrounding forests. Points of light blinked in clusters, each representing one of the nearly 400 shadow scouts I had deployed, their overlapping coverage forming an intricate web. "This data is unprecedented," Twilight began, voice steady and energized. "With this many eyes, we can track movements, predict threats, and coordinate rapid responses. Our first task is to analyze the patterns the scouts have reported." I stepped forward, feeling the familiar pulse of Agiris and Barrow beneath my skin, a reminder of the power I commanded and the responsibility it entailed. The scouts provide real-time alerts and detailed observations, but interpreting this data requires collaboration. Each of you brings unique insight to identify what may be dangerous and what is benign. Applejack folded her forelegs, nodding. "I've been watching the outer edges. There's been some unusual tracks near the western woods, changelings moving in small groups. Not the big swarm we saw before, but scouts. They're probing." Rainbow Dash leaned in, pointing to a flickering cluster on the map. "These lights near the northern ridge are moving faster. Could be patrols or new scouts trying to find weak spots." Pinkie Pie twirled on her hooves excitedly. "It's like playing hide and seek. Except, with evil bugs." Rarity crossed her hooves thoughtfully. "The scouts' reports suggest varying tactics, some slow and cautious, others bold and quick. We need to prepare for both." Fluttershy's soft voice added, "The animals near the eastern forest have been restless too. The scouts picked up disturbances there." Twilight smiled, energized by the collective effort. "Excellent observations. Now, let's discuss how to use this information." I gestured toward the map. "Our goal is to anticipate threats before they reach Ponyville's core. The scout network forms a layered shield. When a pair detects movement, neighboring pairs respond immediately to contain or delay. Meanwhile, we prepare to intervene." Applejack stepped forward, voice steady. "That means our teams need to be ready to move fast, covering gaps, supporting scouts under pressure." Rainbow Dash grinned. "Fast and fierce. I'm ready to fly wherever I'm needed." I continued, "We must also use the terrain to our advantage. The forest's density, hills, and river crossings create natural choke points. Scouts can funnel intruders toward these areas where we can trap or confront them." Rarity nodded. "I can help design magical barriers to enhance those choke points, make them stronger and more visible to our allies." Pinkie Pie bounced with enthusiasm. "And I can help with distractions and surprise tactics. Maybe a party popper trap or two." The room filled with laughter, lightening the weight of planning. Twilight's eyes softened as she added, "We also need communication protocols. The scouts use shadows to signal, but we need clear, simple codes so everyone can respond without confusion." I nodded. "Agreed. I will teach you how to read the scouts' shadow signals, subtle changes in shape, pulse, and movement. Once you learn this language, coordinating will be seamless." Fluttershy smiled gently. "That sounds wonderful. It will help us all feel connected, even when apart." The discussion grew detailed and rich, roles assigned, communication drills planned, and training schedules expanded. The camaraderie in the room was tangible, every voice contributed, every concern addressed. At one point, Applejack looked directly at me, a rare smile breaking her usual stoicism. "Shredder, I didn't think I'd ever be saying this, but I'm glad you brought those shadows into our team. They've changed the game." I returned her smile, quiet but sincere. "Together, we will keep this town safe. Rainbow Dash cracked her knuckles, eyes gleaming. Let's make sure any invader thinks twice before stepping foot near Ponyville. Pinkie Pie bounced happily. And we'll throw a victory party when we win. The meeting stretched well into the afternoon, every detail laid out, every strategy sharpened like a blade ready for battle. The Scouts' data had given us a map not just of the land, but of the threats we faced, and with that knowledge came confidence. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows through the library windows, Twilight's voice rose once more, firm and hopeful. This is our strongest defense yet. A blend of magic, shadow, speed, and heart. I believe we're ready. I looked around at the faces shining with determination and hope. Ready to protect, I said simply. The future was uncertain, but in this moment, surrounded by allies and armed with power and purpose, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: assurance. We were prepared. And Ponyville would stand unbroken. Chapter 20, Trial by Shadows and Light. The morning air in Ponyville carried a crisp clarity, the kind that seemed to sharpen senses and steady nerves. After hours of planning, mapping, and strategizing, today was the day to test everything we had prepared: the communication protocols, the scout networks, the blending of shadow and magic. Twilight had organized the exercise meticulously, her calm voice guiding us through the plans as the main six and I stood gathered in the orchard clearing. Remember, Twilight began, her eyes bright with determination, this simulation isn't just about strength. It's about coordination, communication, and trust. We're going to push ourselves, push the Scouts and our own abilities to their limits. Rainbow Dash stretched her wings, excitement crackling in her expression. I've been waiting for this. Time to see if all this training pays off. Applejack cracked her knuckles with a steady grin. Let's keep it real. Practice like the real thing. Pinkie Pie bounced on her hooves, her usual bubbly energy toned down with focus. And no pie throwing in the middle of a mission. Pinkie promise. Fluttershy nodded softly, her gaze steady despite the nerves I could sense beneath. We'll all watch out for each other. The orchard was alive with the quiet hum of the Shadow Scouts we had deployed earlier, flickers of darkness weaving through the trees and grass like living threads. I called upon Agiris and Barrow, though keeping their full strength restrained. This was a training exercise, not an actual battle. The simulation began with a distant signal, one scout detecting an approaching intruder, in this case, a volunteer pony playing the part of a changeling infiltrator. The alert pulsed through the network as pairs of scouts spread out, converging on the point with silent precision. Backup requested, I announced, voice low but clear. Groups Alpha and Beta, move in. Rainbow Dash took to the sky, a blur of blue, while Applejack and Fluttershy moved quietly on the ground, coordinating with the scouts via the shadow signals I taught them. Pinkie Pie and Rarity positioned themselves to provide support and, in Pinkie's case, distraction if needed. The intruder pony darted through the trees, but the layered scout network tightened around, shadows coiling and shifting to hem in the target without causing harm. Shadows, on me, I called softly, extending tendrils that wove a gentle cage, restricting movement but allowing communication. Twilight's magic flared as she cast a shimmering light barrier, reinforcing the containment. The group worked seamlessly, each member moving with purpose. Pinkie Pie giggled softly. Gotcha! This is like a big, spooky game of tag. Rainbow Dash hovered overhead, scanning for any sign of escape routes. No way you're getting past us. Applejack kept close, voice low but firm. Don't let your guard down. The intruder pony, smiling and playing along, nodded as they struggled against the shadow cage. As the simulation reached its climax, the signal pulsed again, an alert of a secondary threat approaching the eastern border. The volunteers shifted roles instantly, some moving to intercept the new target, while others maintained containment. Twilight turned to me, eyes alight with excitement. Shredder, your Scouts network responded faster than I expected. I allowed a faint smile. They are extensions of our will, trained and connected. Rarity clapped softly. It's impressive to see how shadows and magic weave together so seamlessly. Pinkie Pie twirled happily. Best training day ever. Can we do it again? Fluttershy gave a soft smile. I feel safer knowing we can work like this. Rainbow Dash grinned widely. We're ready for anything now. Applejack nodded in agreement. All that practice paid off. As the sun climbed higher, the training continued, scouts relaying signals, ponies coordinating attacks and defenses, shadows and magic blending with growing ease. Every success built confidence, every small mistake was met with constructive correction. At one point, Applejack turned to me with a grin. You ever think this would be your kind of fight? I met her steady gaze. I always knew shadows could protect as well as threaten. Twilight smiled softly, adding, and here, with friendship and trust, they do both. The day ended with laughter and shared stories beneath the orchard's boughs, shadows no longer just tools of power, but bonds between allies. The future gleamed brighter, forged in shadows and light intertwined. My Little Pony, What If I Am the Shadow Monarch? Chapter 21, Whispers in the Wind and Shadows of Doubt. The warmth of the day lingered faintly as dusk began to weave its muted colors across Ponyville's skies. The orchard, once bustling with the fervor of training, now lay quiet beneath the lengthening shadows. Victory from our simulation exercise still hummed in the air, a testament to the power of our new alliance of shadows and light intertwined. But beneath that fragile calm, I could sense something else, whispers and unease stirring through the town like a subtle undercurrent. It began in the marketplace, the heart of Ponyville's daily life, where ponies gathered to trade goods and stories alike. Rumors had begun to spread, voices low and urgent about the Shadow Scouts, about me, about the unknown. I stood alongside Twilight and Applejack as we walked the crowded stalls, listening carefully. Did you hear? A grizzled earth pony muttered to his companion. They say Shredder commands shadows that watch us all. Some say it's unnatural. A mare nearby nodded solemnly. I don't like it. Shadows belong to the night, not our town. Pinkie Pie, ever bright and buoyant, tried to lighten the mood. Come on, every pony. Shadows can be fun. Like when they hide you during hide and seek. But the unease persisted, slipping into conversations and glances. Twilight's expression tightened. I want to address this, she said quietly, eyes scanning the crowd. Fear of the unknown can grow fast if left unspoken. I spoke then, voice calm but firm. I understand that shadows carry old fears. But the Scouts watch to protect. Their purpose is your safety, not secrecy. Applejack's tone was steady. We all saw what Shredder and his shadows did during the training. They saved us. That counts for something. Still, skepticism lingered in whispers. Later, we gathered in Twilight's library, the atmosphere thick with concern. Rarity paced, her usual elegance tempered by frustration. Rumors can unravel everything we worked for. If ponies begin to fear you, Shredder, the trust we built will crumble. Rainbow Dash slammed a hoof lightly on the table. Yeah, I don't want to fight the town and changelings. Fluttershy's voice was soft but clear. Maybe we can talk to every pony, explain what the Scouts do, show them the good. Pinkie Pie nodded eagerly. An info party. With flyers and games and snacks. Twilight folded her hooves, eyes thoughtful. Education and transparency will help. We need to show Ponyville that shadows aren't enemies. I nodded. Agreed. I will join you in these efforts. Together, we can shift perceptions. Applejack's smile was grim but genuine. It won't be easy, but we'll do it. The days that followed were filled with outreach, public demonstrations, conversations with wary citizens, and moments of honest dialogue. I showed how the Shadow Scouts worked, how they could never harm but only protect. Twilight and the main six stood beside me, lending their voices and trust. At a town meeting, I spoke plainly, shadows here are not threats but guardians. They watch so you do not have to live in fear. I am here to protect, not to rule. A silence followed, heavy and uncertain, but then a voice rose from the crowd, a young colt, his eyes bright. I believe you. We've seen you fight. We know you stand with us. That moment was a turning point, a fragile bridge of trust being rebuilt. Yet, beneath my calm exterior, I remained vigilant. Shadows carried old fears, but they also held promise. It was up to me and all of us to shape which would endure. Chapter 22, Light in the Shadows. The demonstration. The tension that had woven itself into the fabric of Ponyville over the past days was palpable as the sun climbed high, painting the town square in warm gold. Today was the day we would face that tension directly, not with power alone, but with openness. Twilight had orchestrated a public demonstration of the Shadow Scouts' abilities, and every one of us was acutely aware that trust was fragile. The crowd gathering around the square buzzed with curiosity, skepticism, and a faint hope that we could prove the Scouts were protectors, not threats. I stood beside Twilight near the stage, a simple wooden platform decorated with blooming flowers and banners proclaiming Ponyville's unity. The main six flanked us, their faces focused yet inviting. Applejack gave me a brief nod, the steady assurance I needed before stepping forward. Twilight's horn glowed gently as she addressed the crowd. Thank you all for coming. We understand the concerns about the Shadow Scouts and Shredder's powers. Today, we hope to show you what they truly are: a tool for safety, a shield for Ponyville. Whispers rose from the assembled ponies, some wary, others watchful. I could feel their unease beneath the surface, but I knew fear dissolved most easily in knowledge. I raised my voice, steady and clear. The Scouts are not creatures of darkness meant to harm. They are extensions of my will, constructed of shadows that watch, report, and protect. They have no will of their own, no desire to cause harm. Pinkie Pie, ever vibrant, bounded onto the stage beside me. And they're pretty cool too. They can slip through cracks and shadows so fast, you won't even see 'em coming. A ripple of laughter eased some of the tension. I signaled to the perimeter where pairs of Scouts had been deployed among the crowd, subtle waves of dark tendrils shimmering briefly as they moved with silent purpose. Watch closely, I said. These Scouts can observe threats before they reach us, relay information instantly, and contain dangers long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Suddenly, a pair of Scouts extended their shadows to gently surround a willing volunteer pony from the audience. The shadows wove a cage, tight yet harmless, demonstrating precise control. Twilight's magic wove a light barrier atop the shadows, creating a striking visual of balanced darkness and light intertwined. I am safe, the volunteer assured the crowd, calm and smiling. Rainbow Dash zoomed overhead, performing a graceful loop, then landed beside me with a confident grin. See? Nothing to fear when we work together. Rarity stepped forward, enchanting the shadows with shimmering threads of magic that highlighted their beauty and precision. As the demonstration progressed, ponies watched as the Scouts patrolled and responded to simulated threats, responding quickly and effectively without harm or chaos. An elderly mare whispered to her companion, I didn't believe it at first, but seeing is believing. Applejack caught my eye and mouthed, good work. After the demonstration, Twilight invited questions from the crowd. Many ponies voiced concerns, but as answers were given openly and honestly, skepticism softened into understanding. A young colt raised his hoof. How do we know they won't turn on us? Shadows can be dangerous. I met his gaze directly. Because they answer to me and I answer to Ponyville. Their power is bound by trust and purpose. Fluttershy stepped forward, voice gentle. And because we all stand together. We protect one another. Pinkie Pie chimed in brightly. And sometimes, shadows throw the best parties. Laughter blossomed through the crowd, a healing balm. As the event closed, Twilight whispered beside me, you did well. This was a crucial step. I nodded, feeling the warmth of tentative trust weaving through Ponyville's heart. Trust is fragile, I said quietly. But today, we made it stronger. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that no longer felt ominous but protective shadows that had found their place in the light. Chapter 23, Shadows Stir and Unity Tested. The warm glow of the setting sun still clung to Ponyville's rooftops as the crowd dispersed from the demonstration in the town square. The lingering buzz of conversation was lighter, more hopeful, a subtle thaw in the frost of suspicion that had gripped many hearts. I walked alongside Twilight and the main six beneath the fading amber sky, the soft rustle of leaves underfoot grounding the moment. We had taken a vital step forward. Trust had begun to root. Yet, beneath the surface calm, a tremor of unease threaded through the air, something unseen but undeniably present. Twilight's expression shifted as a subtle vibration passed through the magic in the air. Her horn flared softly, sending a ripple through the gathered shadows at my hooves. "Shredder," she said quietly, tension sharpening her voice, "I'm sensing something. The scouts are picking up rapid movements, multiple intrusions farther out than we expected." I narrowed my eyes, instincts flaring. "Prepare yourselves. This may be the beginning of a real threat." Without hesitation, Rainbow Dash leapt into the air, wings beating fiercely as she soared toward the northern perimeter. Applejack and I moved swiftly through the streets, rallying ponies and readying defenses. The scouts, those hundreds of shadow eyes and hands, stirred with silent urgency, weaving through forests, hills, and river bends, their tendrils pulsing in alert. Pinkie Pie's normally buoyant voice took on a note of steel. "Looks like the party's just getting started, hey?" Rarity's eyes narrowed with focus. "We must act swiftly and with precision." Fluttershy moved quietly among the townsfolk, helping calm frightened ponies and tending to those unsettled by the sudden alert. The scout network sent a flurry of reports, shadow pairs containing groups of changelings attempting to breach outer defenses, coordinated and relentless. They moved with new cunning, probing and testing weaknesses. Twilight's voice crackled through our magical link. "We'll coordinate reinforcements. Shredder, your shadows are crucial in holding lines until we arrive." I released tendrils that thickened and coiled, weaving barriers and traps, darkness given form and purpose. The shadows struck with precision, catching intruders in nets of living night. Baru's crushing strength and Ajiri's swift strikes guided my control, each movement calculated. Applejack shouted encouragement as she and Rainbow Dash intercepted a band attempting to flank from the forest's edge. "Hold fast. They won't get through on our watch." The clash was fierce. Light and shadow entwined in a deadly dance as magic and raw power met changeling malice. For every breach the attackers forced, our scouts and defenders closed ranks, adapting with growing coordination. A sudden roar split the air, a larger changeling leader emerging, stronger and more cunning than the rest. Twilight's horn blazed as she launched a barrier, but the creature shattered it with overwhelming force. "Focus your attacks," I commanded, directing shadows to bind and isolate the leader while ponies targeted its vulnerabilities. Pinkie Pie, despite the danger, found a way to keep spirits high. "Come on, team. Let's show them what Ponyville's made of." The tide shifted as unity and strategy prevailed. The changeling leader was subdued, and the swarm began to retreat under relentless pressure. Breathing heavily, the group regrouped beneath the orchard's safety. The scars of battle were fresh, branches broken, earth torn, but the resolve had never been stronger. Twilight turned to me, eyes fierce and grateful. This was a true test, and we stood together. I allowed a rare smile. Power alone is hollow without trust. Today, we forged both. Applejack clapped me on the shoulder. "That's the Shredder I know." Rainbow Dash grinned, wings still fluttering. "Best fight ever. Let's keep it that way." Pinkie Pie laughed, breathless but bright. "And after, we throw the biggest we survived party ever." Fluttershy's quiet smile held a warmth that steadied us all. As stars winked awake overhead, the shadows beneath me curled softly, no longer just instruments of power, but symbols of a bond that could withstand the darkest trials. Ponyville was ready. And so was I. Chapter 24, Renewal amidst the ruins. The first light of dawn painted the horizon in gentle hues of rose and gold, casting a soft glow over the battered fields and bruised trees surrounding Ponyville. The night's battle had faded into memory, yet its echoes lingered in every broken branch and trampled patch of earth. The town stirred slowly to life, a cautious resilience knitting itself into the fabric of the community. Today was not just about recovery, it was about renewal. I walked through the streets alongside Twilight, Applejack, and the others, observing the quiet determination etched on every face. Ponies bustled about with renewed purpose, repairing fences, tending to the wounded trees, and offering aid to neighbors. The warmth of shared effort softened the raw edges of recent conflict. Twilight's voice broke through the gentle hum of activity. Every scar here tells a story. A story of survival, of strength, and of unity. Applejack nodded, hauling a bundle of wooden planks. Ain't no storm that can break this place, not when every ponies got each other's back. I allowed a brief smile.